Welcome to the debuted episode of No Reserve, part of the Hagerty Podcast Network. And we're here to help you make sense of the collector car market, whether you're buying, selling, or simply watching. Now, I'm Larry Webster, editor of Hagerty Media, and I'm joined by...
I'm Dave Kinney. I'm the publisher of the Hagerty Price Guide.
Thank you, Dave. And between the two of us, we've got decades of experience buying, selling, and driving the cars we love. Plus, we're backed by the data of the Hagerty valuation tools. On this episode, we're talking about Princess Diana's personal Ford Escort RS, a 50,000-mile Ford GT, an automatic Supra, a Jaguar DType, and what's the story with conversion vans, plus a whole lot more. Hello, Dave.
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you, Larry.
It's going just great. We're recording this on Friday, September 16th, and it's really been an interesting week. Dave, I want to spend the first 10 minutes on our opening bid segment. So, Dave, tell me, in the past week, what sales have really raised your eyebrows?
The first one is definitely Princess Diana's Ford Escort RS Turbo that sold for somewhere around 800 and some odd $1,000. It really doesn't matter how much. It's a $42,000 car according to Price Guide, and that's all in. So even the best one in the world. It's really interesting. This car did sell before the death of Queen Elizabeth. I don't know if that would have even increased it more, but this is something like 2,000% over the expected price. And this is the biggest celebrity value that I think I've seen in my lifetime on a car that wasn't just a $2,000 car that sold for $64,000. This is huge money for this car. And it's well documented, but I mean, it's crazy. And, is Princess Diana the new Steve McQueen? I mean,
Well, that's what I was just going to bring up. It's pretty cool. She actually drove this thing. She liked it. It's a stick shift, very sporty car. Yep. I mean, if you didn't love Diana before, you've got a lot of reason to love her now. But yeah,
and it's got, I mean, it's also in Darth Vader black, which I mean couldn't be any better. So, and she picked the right one. I mean, it's an Escort RS Turbo. She could have gotten a Econo box Escort, but she got the real thing. So, that's got to add a couple $100,000 to the value in the end, right, Larry?
Yeah, but what I've seen in this in all the auction world, when you have a celebrity owner, it's very generational, right? As we say,
Yep.
nobody cares what Clark Gable drove. Steve McQueen or Jerry Seinfeld, they sort of held up as if they own the car, it adds value to it. But I have not seen like these thousands of percent. Really, it's usually like 10 or 20% for a well-known celebrity, correct?
Yeah, it usually is. I mean, there's kind of Hagerty did some research in it, and you could take a deep dive and find out. We did some research into celebrity value, and it actually wasn't Steve McQueen. It was someone else who came out on top. But the reliable people sometimes get knocked out of the box by somebody like Princess Diana. And it's fun to watch. I don't think I'd put my investment money in this car, Larry. I think it would be something more for fun, or if you owned a museum. I mean, think about it: $800,000. You send, you've got a museum. Maybe get, maybe 5,000, 10,000 more people through the doors at $10 a piece. So maybe you could partially justify it, but I don't know how you could do it other than that.
Nope. This is one of those you just can't explain. Stuff happens.
That's right.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's just, whatever. The one that caught my eye this past week is a super interesting oddball. It's a 2003 Volkswagen Passat W8 Wagon. This sold on carsandbid.com for just under $13,000. Now, this is the oddest of oddball cars, Dave, because number one, it's a stick shift wagon. Number two, it has this W8 engine, which is basically two VR6 melded together. So, I'm sorry, they weren't VR6s. That would be the W12, but part of it was lopped off. It has basically 4-cylinder banks, kind of in a fan. Super crazy, super weird. This was Ferdinand Piëch at his most awesome because he made this car happen, right?
Right. And I mean, the long roof, the fact it's a manual, I think we've got less than 200 built, or 200 for the U.S. market, I guess. This is normally something you might find at a buy here, pay here lot. So, when we talk about the value on this thing, I'm saying it's worth 12,000 bucks all day, or 12,800 is what it's sold for. I'm saying that's worth it all day long. This is on Cars and Bids, real enthusiast site that you find a a lot of the, not as expensive cars. I think if you were to look up values on these things, they come in at around 6 or 8 grand. Throw that out, because with the manual transmission, that really we doubled the value here. I think this is kind of a smart investment for somebody. However, this generation of Volkswagen is kind of known for being maintenance intensive, don't you think, Larry?
Well, there's a couple of things I want to ask you about because it struck me as this is one of the best bought cars of the past week. And I think you're
Yeah,
saying the same thing. This thing has some real potential because it's such an interesting oddball. On the flip side, there's a couple of trends I see, like automotive journalists like me, we love these stick shift wagons, but the market kind of goes ho hum. And that's not universal. So there is a little bit of a risk here. And then, to your point, a lot of these German cars from the aughts are very electronic intensive and have a lot of interdependencies with electronics. So to keep these things running is often not a cheap prospect if you can find the parts. And to your point, this is a very strange engine, not made in high numbers. I'm sure there'll be people that somebody like, oh, you can get all the parts you want, blah 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 blah. But it is a challenge. But yeah, the
maybe
most.
this maybe this is one of those ones that you buy a parts car and another parts car to go along with it. Unfortunately, I find that with Passats and Jettas, a lot of times the same parts break all the time. So you might buy two parts cars, but it might be missing the ones that you eventually need. But this is Larry, this is a real enthusiast buy. I think we can both agree with that. It's cheap money. It's great transportation. It's got the long roof, so it's got the look. It's got the manual transmission. Special awards to the buyer of this guy. Let's hope the buyer of this car. Let's hope he can keep this thing on the road.
Yeah, the other thing to consider is it's such a sleeper. It looks like a Passat. Nobody knows it has this kind of honking V8 under it. And, compared to the substitution for this, which is the Audi Allroad stick shift of the same era, it's turbocharged, a little more complicated. This one has no turbos, all NA. Yeah, best belt car. Whoever bought it, enjoy it. Great buy. We're all a little jealous over here. So good for you. And then there was a really strange one on Cars and Bids called a Smart Crossblade. And maybe you could tell us what this thing is first off.
Okay, so imagine, if you will, right? Going back to the visual aspect of this. Take a smart car, lop the top off. Don't put doors on it, but put a crash barrier on it. Have Brabus do some tuning work on it, and never sell it when new in the United States. They're all Euro models. They might have some Canadian ones. I'm not sure. This one is in kilometers and not miles, of course. Very low kilometrage on it. Black with red, which is a great color. I think they were going to build 2,000 of them, from what I understand, but the word is that they never finished 2,000. This one has 2,500 miles. The Crossblade looks cool, and that's kind of hard for a smart car. And I can say that as a smart car owner,
You own
somebody
one?
who I bought one new, dude. Yeah, sure.
You're
So I know. It's still in my garage. It gets very occasional use. It's got the same amount of miles on it as this one. As a matter of fact, Larry, I'm thinking I'll give you a Sawzall in my smart car, and we can make a Crossblade. And at $55,000, where this car sold, that's amazing. That's a lot more than would have been expected. I think it's obviously low miles, good color combination, nice car. I think you can still pick these things up for around 20 grand. They're not in the Hagerty price guide because they're not a car that we see all that much. And but I think we should, probably, maybe have a captain's revolt here and start putting smart crossblades in, because they are just cool, right?
Yeah, this is another. It's like the Diana thing. You can't really explain it. I understand one person really is enthusiastic about this car, but enough to bid it up to 55,000 is a head scratcher any way you take it. So I mean, for the seller, well sold. Congrats. I've driven
Exactly.
these smart cars. I think they were a neat idea. Mercedes invested millions, right? This was their, hey, we're gonna have a city car that's really efficient. It's a tidy little engine. You could pull it into a parking lot instead of a parking spot on a road. They are
Oh
what they
hell,
are.
you can pull two of them into a conventional parking spot if you want
Right.
to. And one thing I've learned, has I usually take my Smart to the airport because it's always so tough to find parking there. So I can put it in a like a three-quarter size space. But the thing you don't want to do is don't be that guy like with the motorcycle who parks all the way in the back in the shopping center parking lot. Park out in the middle and in the front, so at least people don't pull in and go, "Ah, I can't believe there's a car in there." So
Yeah, the fascinating thing about these is Mercedes engineered the bejesus out of them. And, the whole engine cradle is meant to submarine underneath the passenger compartment. So even though it looks really small, the whole thing is designed to survive all those crashes with every vehicle that looks like it will kill you that's already on the road.
yes,
So
but keep in mind you are the ping pong ball on
you are
the
the ping pong
you
ball.
know, in that conversation. But you're right. I've actually delved deeply into the parts books for these things, and they are incredibly complicated, which is
Yeah.
probably not a great thing for somebody who owns one that's out of warranty. But yeah, say the
No,
least.
this is one of those cars. It's sold at 55 grand again on Cars and Bids. Well sold, but it's another one of those you wonder who at Mercedes championed this and got the budget to spend all the money to develop it, to build the factory. Like, did they survive this? Because they didn't sell well. You remember they were partnered with Swatch watches and they thought it'd be
Right?
this cool thing, but then everybody's like, there's no room. I can't put anything in it. I can't even grocery shop. So that kind of hurt it.
Yeah, it was smart and art. That was the whole thing. So the Swatch watch was the big connection that kind of died. I think even Swatch walked away from. I'm pretty sure the guy who started this project did it when he was 58, knowing he was going to retire when he was 65. So he'd either get a pension or stay on.
Yeah,
Who the
you
heck
do.
knows? But
I'll be long
one of the
gone when
two.
this thing tanks. Yeah, it's kind of
Right?
amazing.
Exactly.
And then there's one more before we end this up. You brought up this Supra. Tell us about
Yeah.
it.
All right, 16,000 mile 93 Supra Turbo. This one's got the removable roof. These cars in the price guide can go up to 190,000. A number two is 143. This particular car sold for 121 on Bring a Trailer. But the interesting thing is it sold just a year earlier. It's an automatic, by the way. It is not a manual car. Automatic, here's the warning.
Sigh.
Um, yeah, I know, but it sold like a year ago for 49,500, and then sold when Gas Monkey Garage is representing it, and it sold for 121. But you get a tour of the Gas Monkey Garage, so I mean,
Hey,
Larry, that's got to
so
be
look,
worth at least 75
okay,
grand, right?
Richard Rawlings has celebrity cred, obviously, right? He's not in Diana territory, but it sounds like he's better than Steve McQueen, right?
No, no, I think the market has gone up on these a
Oh,
lot, and we have seen some really expensive Supra turbos that have sold in other venues as well and brought in big, big money. I think it's low miles. I think it's the colors here. We got black with saddle, and it's got what people want right now. Yeah, I don't think it's my 121,000, but for somebody, I guess they've
wait,
got
wait,
their
wait. It's not yours because you're worried that that's not a sustainable price or a long-term
No,
price.
actually, I don't think that is not a sustainable price. I think that these cars have gone up and are staying up. When we first saw them, go over 100 grand, we were all kind of surprised because they were hanging out at kind of 50, 60, and they took a big jump up to 100. And then they went 130, and then they've gone from there. And those were all for the manual transmission cars, not for the automatics. So the automatics have caught up. And think about it, man, it's demographics again because not everybody wants a manual transmission. I mean, you want a manual transmission. I usually want a manual transmission, but for a car you're actually going to drive, sometimes if you got city traffic or you got a long haul or something like that, a lot of people prefer automatic.
Oh, so if I get you right, you're saying even though this is an automatic that sold for really, really big money, this may be a new trend. Some of these late model cars with automatics may not have the penalty that we've seen.
Yes, sir. I couldn't
Oh,
agree
wow.
more. I think that more and more of this is coming true. I mean, look, the manufacturers lead the way. They're the ones that are dumping out of manual transmission cars, but that's because of demand on the new car side. New cars become used cars. Used cars occasionally become collector cars, and we're seeing less and less emphasis on the manual transmission for a
Dave,
whole bunch of cars.
this is a contrarian view, and I love it. Let me throw one else at you about that price staying there. I think that's a pretty risky buy if you want to keep your money, because think about the NSX market, right? The first gen
Yeah.
ones, they shot up like Supras, and then I don't tell like now they're just sort of like 80, 90, 100 all day, right? They just sort of flatline, don't you think?
Yeah, and what happens is everybody who wanted one got one. I mean, it's as simple as that. Not everybody wants a first gen, Acura NSX. They're great cars, but life goes on. Sometimes people want something with a little more. They trade it in for something else. They buy something else. We see this all the time, Larry. This happens with older cars too. You see, a classic example recently. I'll make it quick. Was 190 SLs. They went through the roof. Somebody sold one for 300 and some odd $1,000. Everybody who had a 190 SL that needed a restoration now had permission to go to restore the car. So they spend $150,000 on the restoration on the car that's been sitting in the back of their shop. They hang it out there for 300,000. Guess what? There are not that many buyers at $300,000 for a 190 SL. Principal substitution. Again, you can think of all the other cars you'd rather have than a 190. I'm sorry, I said 300. I meant 190 SL. So with the 190 SL, there's just not that many people who want it. This was 190 SL was, people cross shop that with a MGB, believe it or not. They're
Oh, wow.
so much better built than the MGB, but they were around the same kind of money when they were new. And so, much better built, but it's no 300 SL. A 190 is a 190. It is not a fast car.
All right. Well, thank you for all that info. I mean, it's somebody's really geeked about their purchase, but I think it's great. So we're going to move on. Let's kick some tires because there are some upcoming auctions that I know I'm super excited about. The one that has me dreaming and wishing I'd won the lottery is it's a 1955 Jaguar D-Type. It's for sale as part of the Jim Taylor collection through Broad Arrow. This car is going to be for auction at no reserve, meaning whatever it bids up to, people are going to buy. And it's a original, hasn't been crashed, only run around 60 of these cars built. Absolutely freaking gorgeous. I don't know. I'm speechless here, and I'm never speechless. I
All
mean,
right, all right. So it's a 21,000 mile example. Jim Taylor, a great guy and a great owner of the car. He's selling almost all of his cars, and Broad Arrow is handling that sale. These can sell for between $6 and $9 million. This is XKD 515, well-known car. It's got a good list of owners in the back, and like you said, so many of these were raced. So the engine was replaced, the gearbox was replaced. Hell, for some of them, I'm sure the body was replaced. This car was kind of a gentleman racer car. It was really kind of a street car too for the longest time. So it doesn't have a race history. That's a good thing and a bad thing in this case, because without that, it's a well-known history and not all the swap outs. So this is one with the original engine apparently, and it should go very, very well. The Jaguar D-types have not been setting the world on fire
I don't
recently in
understand
terms
that at
of,
all. I like
yeah, I
why.
know. I mean, these cars are
What?
so beautiful.
Yeah, but I mean,
Well,
the story is incredible, right? Because they won Le Mans. They were at the height of the technology because they started using disc brakes. They were built in a factory that burned down, preventing the entire run. They have exposed rivets in the bodywork. What else do you need, people? I mean, these things should be $30 million cars all day long, in my view. I just don't get it that they're under 10 million.
I think part of it is the fact that they've been around for such a long time and they have been obtainable in the past. I think that's one thing that kind of holds it back. Another is the Jaguar name, which is a fantastic name. Just absolutely, one of the most historic marks of automobiles made. But for a lot of people, they go, yeah, Jaguar's no Ferrari. Well, forget that. They're thinking wrong because at this point, these D types, C types as well were competitive. They were fun, they were fast, and they still are sexy. A good looking car all the way through. I'm hoping that this thing does some real big money, and I'm thinking that that possibly the weather, the stars, everything's aligning, and so I'm hoping that that people will go out and buy this and
Well,
pay a lot for it
yeah,
because it's a good car.
here's one thing I wonder about. Like a car like that comes up for sale and it goes in another collection. That person, unless you show up with suitcases of cash over what it's worth, is probably not going to sell. So this feels like one of those like, yeah, this opportunity just doesn't come up. And I know like auctioneers will say that all the time, right, to get people to bid, but this really feels like one of those oddball moments where you ain't, the next time this happens, you probably won't be alive. So
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
you got
Well,
the
I
money,
mean,
suck it up and buy it.
like I said, our number two price in the price guide is $6 million. Our number one price is $9 million. We'll see if this holds. But this is one of those cars that's it's gonna test the book. We'll see. I
Oh,
would not be surprised if it goes for more. It should. I mean, it's one of the ones to have, and like you said, no reserve. That means that the last person with their hand up is going to own it.
yeah. So the next one that's really got my eye. It's super cool. It's a Ford GT. It's a it's one of the new ones. It's a 2017. This thing has 50,000 miles on it. Like I
I,
so
it,
want to meet this guy. I mean,
This dude is my new hero. I mean,
totally.
he bought one of the things new. Like everybody was keeping them for the 18 months or whatever and flipping them for $1 million or 1.5 million, making $1 million profit because the MSRP on this particular car was 485,250, and it's a pretty nicely equipped car with the liquid blue paint, which is one of my favorite colors on this. And this dude took it out and he drove it. And let's hope he dailied it. Let's hope he drove it every single day, every single place. Took it to Walmart. Put the paper towels in the back. All that sort of stuff. Whatever. But we never see him with miles. Now, here's the interesting thing. Last night, when I was looking at this just a few hours ago, it was at $551,000. So the dude has already made 100
He's a
grand
winner.
on his car.
Winner,
Yeah, he's a
winner
winner.
all day. I tell you what,
Yeah.
I picked this so wrong. I actually got an allocation for one of these.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and I got one of my buddies, and there's four of us, and we were gonna buy it, and we were gonna flip it. And they said, you had to sign a contract. If you buy it, you can't sell it for 18 months, like you said. And the big thing that tripped me up was we didn't know how many they were gonna make. And they
Yeah.
turned out they made about 1,000 of them. And then I thought, well, shoot, with all these McLarens and Ferraris and all this stuff coming out, I was like, I don't have the kind of money to risk carrying a $500,000 car for 18 months, and neither did
So,
my group. So we passed.
So, so Deadmau5 and Larry Webster were getting allocations for these, huh? I like that.
That's right. Totally. Total mistake. Blew it. Blew my
Oh
chance.
well,
Could have had the whole college kids' savings in one move. But this one is, like you said, it's already well over the asking price. He's enjoyed it for 50,000 miles. I mean, kudos. Well done. I mean, I just want to. It's totally great. What's
yeah,
on
yeah.
your minds? What are you looking at that has you very excited?
Another auction company out there that does online is P Car Market, and it's P Car because it's Porsche. This one's not, we'll see what happens with this, but I like the 360 Modena or Modena, depending on how you want to call it. This one's the F1, which has got the infamous and famous automatic transmission. I love the colors on this one. It's that kind of deeper yellow, and it's got kind of I'm calling it an oxblood interior, kind of a natural with a little bit of color to it. When I looked at it here just a few minutes ago, it doesn't have a bid on it, but these cars normally go between 90 and $100,000, somewhere around that. That's what we got them for in the price guide for number two and at 90. This is a 19,000 mile example, which is really, really low miles for these cars, although we do see them with less miles. But a driven car, so I like driven cars more than cars that have been, put in a box and not driven, especially when they're more complicated cars like the 360.
Yeah.
But something, when you talk Ferrari and you talk affordable, then you're talking under $100,000. So this is a car that's right around that and has a lot of style, and it's a Ferrari. So
Yeah, yeah.
what the hell?
These are super interesting cars, the 360s in particular, because you remember Enzo Ferrari died in '88, and
Yep.
the NSX comes out in the early '90s. Ferrari's competitor is the 348, which was still a car that was rooted in the '70s, so they were far behind. Luca de Montezemolo takes over Ferrari. First thing he does is he builds that 355, which is one of the most emotional cars
Yep.
I've ever driven. But
Yep.
from what I
Hey,
hear,
the 360 was the street car. I mean, let's put it that way. It
oh,
was
okay,
the
that's the way to put it. Because
yeah, yeah.
when I researched the 355s, there was a while they were $50,000,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. Even with a manual, they
even with
were
a
still
manual.
under 100 grand.
And I remember driving one, and our buddy Colin Comer, I called him. He's like, "Don't buy it." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "I know somebody with 8 engines sitting in the shop waiting for valve guides because they couldn't get parts." I think a lot of this has been solved, but they eat up the exhaust headers crack. there was just a lot of problems. A 5 valve per cylinder head on the 355. And then,
Right.
like you said, they evolved it to the 360, and they made it a lot more durable. I think they used chains instead of belts for the. No, I think you still have to do timing belt
I think
replacement.
360 still timing belts. Yeah, I think
A
the first one that got out of came just a little bit after that. So
big
anyhow,
maintenance,
but
big maintenance cost on these things. That's what holds down the price. But you go on Ferrari chat, and a lot of people are doing this stuff DIY, and especially
yep,
on these cheaper cars. And then the next generation was a 430. I actually had one of those. It was a stick. I felt it didn't have it lost too much of the magic of the 355, even though it was, like you said, a much better car. I think the 360 splits the difference pretty well.
yep. Hey, let's get back to talking about something we haven't talked about in a while. Let's talk about eBay. You were pointing out a Jeep Scrambler CJ8 on eBay, right? That you'd found.
Yeah. This is a it's a 1982 CJ
Right.
Scrambler, and this was the first Jeep that was like a pickup. And these
Yep.
always stuck in my mind because they had the coolest ads back then, Dave, where it was a Jeep Scrambler. It was on the desert, definitely California, and had a couple of dirt bikes in the bed. And of course, I love dirt bikes. I love Jeeps. I was like, I gotta have one. And you don't see these very often. And two things I wanted to bring up. Number one is like eBay used to own the classic car auction, and now it's like more like a advertising site. What happened?
Yeah. Yeah, you find more cars advertised for sale than you find with auction on eBay now. I think a number of things. Number one, somebody we all know the story. Somebody buys a car and they say, "Yeah, my grandma was going to give me the money and she decided to back out." I mean, all the excuses. So an eBay sale is not the most enforceable thing. Not that all of these auctions are. The online ones, you got a large element of trust in them. But in the meantime, the I think the dealers came in and they said this is a better place to advertise a car for sale than it is to go through the process of auctioning. So you'll see, we were looking at Jeeps earlier. You'll see 15 similar ones that are advertised and two that are auctioned. So this one is an auction. The one we're talking about is currently at 16,101. I think that with Jeeps, especially you've got to buy the maintenance and buy the owner. Maintenance is not the most expensive thing on these, but boy, do Jeeps get trashed, as we all know.
Yeah, they get rusty.
So, yeah, rusty too, but also, everyone's an off-road expert when they own a Jeep, and sometimes that off-roading is what you and I would call a traffic accident. So, there's always that to contend with.
I
This is a
know.
really nice, this is a really nice looking one. It's still very, very reasonable, but it's got a long way to go. It's got 5 days to go when we're looking at it
Yeah,
now.
the problem is that I see with eBay is since it's totally automated, you can set whatever reserve you want. And so
Yep.
I think a lot of the sellers are fishing, and they're like, "Well, I'm going to set a $30,000 reserve. The car's worth 15. What the hell? Then maybe I can negotiate with the buyer." So I do think that's sort of what's something that's really hurt them over time is that a lot of cars don't sell because of that.
No, I think they're doing just fine with selling doilies and selling cheap watches and all that sort of
It's
stuff.
great
I
for
mean,
parts.
it's great for parts. It's fantastic for parts. You can find the the mirror that your spouse lopped off of the right hand side of the car. Not that I have any knowledge about this. Instead of going to the manufacturer and buy the $480 part, you can buy a pretty damn nice $48 part that fits just fine. So.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to questions. We get a lot of response. We really appreciate you guys listening. We are here to help, so keep them coming. Bill from Los Angeles, he says, "I've got a 1978 custom Ford van." Oh, that could mean a lot of things. He says, "Jokes. These things were once seen as child abductor specials," which is
Ooh.
true. Thanks for owning that. But there's this hugely strong enthusiast group of owners. Are these vans poised for takeoff? Let me start first. I think what he's talking about are the ones that were customized with the airbrush on the side with like the pirate ships, and it had the little portal window and the shag carpet. They
I
are suddenly cool again, right?
I saw one at the Classic Auto Mall in Pennsylvania about 2 months ago, And I mean, it's a traffic stopper because you haven't seen them for so long. And the thing is like brand new. And I think they want like 60 grand for it, which is a hell of a lot of money for an old van that probably cost 6 grand new and refitted with the Home Depot cabinet and the shag carpeting and the whole nine. So, yeah, there's a lot of collector interest in them. They were definitely of their period, which would be kind of the early 70s, late 60s. Not everybody bought a VW van and went to Woodstock like everybody talks about, but people could use those for whatever trade they were in. They could use them to move stuff around. I remember seeing them with water beds in them, but that's a long, long time ago. So,
Yeah.
just absolutely insane stuff. Yeah, but how long will that baby boomer nostalgia, last? I mean, it doesn't really resonate as much with a Gen X person, I wouldn't think, but it's a fun car to have,
Well,
especially like you said, the graphics, the pirate ships, the Native American, the whole 9 yards. It's great stuff.
yeah, I
All
think
airbrush special.
if you could speak broadly on these, some of them were made by aftermarket companies in a series where they made 5 or 10 of them. And if there's documentation on what was in those, that is probably a pretty safe bet. The next thing would be the if was it built in period, and what does the craftsmanship look like? I don't think that means you got to save the shag carpet. Hell, I would probably replace it if it was original. But I think those are the things that make these things probably long term collectible if they're looked at as a piece of artwork, which I think they are. But as Dave said, huge upside.
Yeah.
It's really hard
Do
to.
not buy the one that says free candy inside. That's all I can tell you.
My buddy's got one. It's got like a ship steering wheel for a steering wheel on the Ford. But they're super fun because they have all these great things. The doghouse is the engine cover between the front seats. You could see people put chandeliers in the side and just like weird as
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
Okay, that is next year's class trip. We're gonna go to one of these shows because it's like a Ron
Oh
Jeremy
yeah,
special.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming almost all of them are within 200 miles of Los Angeles right now. But yeah, let's definitely, the All Ford Nationals, something like that. There's got to be. Look, if they've got 35 Pintos there, they're going to have 35 of the vans too. So let's go.
We'll see you there. Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up. Dave, any final comments?
Buy low and sell high. I think isn't that what they say?
Okay, my final comment is, kudos to that GT owner. And,
Yeah,
and to all of you out there, man, you buy these cars, man, enjoy them. Forget that rapper
yeah,
stuff.
that's exactly right.
Buy what you love, and you'll never be disappointed. Catch you next week on No
Absolutely.
Reserve.
Take care.